a couple of things that I actually do want to talk about before we actually start into the video, talking about the video and the build and how all of this work. And usually I show you how to get the stuff for the builds. In this case scenario, it's a little bit trickier. I'm not going to be able to just use the map as I usually do to show you where are you going to get the stuff. Because some of this stuff, it requires a quest line, some of this stuff, it requires being on a specific legacy dungeon that I do not want to show you. So if you're interested in how to get all of this stuff, links in the video description. That being said, how the hell does this work? Well, basically, you have insta-bleeding. Because this spell right here, that we'll talk about that a little bit on a little while, this causes immediate 400 build-up. 400 bleeding, which is the best status ailment in the game. The thing is that, depending on whether you use it point blank on the enemy or not, it's going to be multiple bleedings at the same time. Usually it's a best idea to use it from a distance, because just one bleeding from a safe distance, it's always nice. But also, seeing things getting one-shotted because they instantly bleed like 3 or 4 times because of how much bleeding this thing does. It's just amazing. The thing is that it has like these 3 thorns that travel through the grounds. Each one of them, it's going to instantly proc 1 status bleeding on the enemy. Sometimes it's going to one-shot them. The thing is also that one very powerful thing about this build is that you can also allocate this stuff into your Mimic Tia. Meaning that, for example, you can just let your Mimic Tia do the dirty job right there, and it's just going to be the most powerful and broken Spirit Ash in the entirety of the game. Because remember that the Mimic Tia is very durable, but the Mimic Tia is also going to be dealing instant bleeding on the enemies. It's not going to aim it properly, it's not going to be using it from a distance. Usually the Mimic Tia is going to be dumped like that, and it's going to want to use it from point blank to the face of the enemy. But still, if you're struggling with things at DLC, if you're struggling with Redan, let me spoiler alert, Redan is actually susceptible to bleeding, and it takes like 4 or 5 procs of bleeding on Redan for you to kill them. So if you're struggling with Redan, this is very much what you want to use. Now the spell location is going to be somewhat weird because of the spell, the staff, the stuff that we are going to use right here. So there is that. That being said, one more thing, 150 stat hungry builds. Why do I like to make 150 builds? Well, usually the answer for that is very simple. I like to make concessions. I think that even 150, which is being lenient, you still have a build. You still have concessions to make. You still are allowed to do some things, and you're not allowed to do like other things. There's nothing wrong with like going like 200, 250, 300, but when you have the chance to just have everything at that time, then what's the point? What's the fun if you already have everything right there? That being said, reasoning behind this allocation, Arcane is going to make our weapon right here, the Maternal Staff, plus 25 scale out of a sorcery scaling. It's going to give you nice sorcery scaling. This hard cap, the final cap for bleeding on a status ailment is 55. 80 points in here is just a hard cap to reach the maximum damage on the base damage of the spell possible, which is something that actually does have nice damage. Intelligence is just the base requirement for the staff, and Faith, that is the base requirement of the spell. The strength and dexterity, that is a collateral of my stats in class, so you can by all means tone down some points in here, place them into bigger. Minds, we don't need that much minds because we're going to be killing things faster than what we need actually right here. And then endurance, because the armor that we have, it's not going to be that heavy. Now, like I was saying, there's a lot of people that actually do want to go beyond that. How do I improve this thing? Well, you can make the ultimate character. You can place more points into endurance to have heavier armor than the one that we're going to have. Place some more points into mine to be able to spam a little bit better, and then place some more points into strength for a better shield. Place some more points into dexterity for better arcane scaling weapons, like for example Eleanor's pole blade, or just something to pair it up, because we are going to be using a weapon that we'll talk about that right now. If you want to be a higher level of a character, have in mind that there's a lot of places where you can allocate points in here and improve your character furthermore than we actually have right here. But this is just the maximum damage output that we're going to be able to get at the end of the day, just 150. So, average armor, the armor set, improves the thorn incantations, the bleeding incantations, so that's nice right there. The legs doesn't, and I'm here using just the Knight's Cavalry just because of purely fashion purposes. We don't have the means of reaching the 51 points threshold that we would need, so it doesn't really matter that you use the heaviest possible grips right here. You're not going to be able to bypass that points threshold right there. The shield, something that allows you to basically have as a means of defending yourself. And it doesn't have like a huge strength requirement. For example, this only requires 10 strength. The maternal staff, this is going to allow us to scale our damage of our spell on A. The spell actually does have nice damage, but most of the DPS is going to be coming from bleeding. You're also going to need a basic weapon for regular exploration. The thing is that this spell, what it does is that it deals like percentage based damage on the enemy. So when you're just killing trash around the field, or you're exploring a legacy dungeon, you're not killing elite enemies. You don't want to be using your FP, your precious FP on them, because it's overall just going to be a better idea to use a basic weapon. The Clean Rod Knight's Bloodsword right here, it doesn't have huge requirements. It's just 11 strength and 13 dexterity, meaning you're not going to have to invest a lot of points to have something as a backup. And usually this spell is not something that you would be using on the face of the enemy if you're not using it to punish a boss, for example. So like always, the highlighted talismans are the ones that I advise for you to have as a must for your character. And unfortunately, for 150 build, this is a very stat hungry build because of the intelligence and fate requirements. However, if you can lower Arcane to 70, you can have a little bit more versatility right here with the recommended talismans. Or if you're a higher level character and you don't need those extra stats from those talismans right there, that's something that you can use right well as well. You can be using the Beloved Stardust, although that's going to make you even more glass cannon. You can be using Radagon Icon, Ertry's Favor, or the Dragon Crest Talisman, maybe something for stamina recovery, Jaw Talisman for heavier armor. There's many things that you can have in here. Just have in mind that these are the ones that I recommend for you to have, and these are the ones that I'm actually using for the specific build right now. The only spell that we're going to be using is Impenetrable Thorns. This has a 15 FP cost, which is not that high, mind you, but it does have a 24 fate requirement. So that is why our stats look so weird right here with with this build. That being said, like I told you, it travels from the ground, it separates in between 3 different casts. If you actually do hit the cast the 3 times and the enemy is susceptible, the enemy is going to immediately be bleeding those 3 times, so that is why this is so powerful. Recommended, not mandatory. This is magic damage. So Terra Magica actually improves the damage, the base damage of our spell, and we are using quite a bit of talismans and improving on our spell power. Remember that the start of the show right here, it's bleeding. That's what's going to be powerful, overpower. But if you do want to have that extra little juice right there, Terra Magica, that's 20% more damage, base damage to your spell right there. And remember that more often than not, you have a fair distance that you can be using this thing from, so there's indeed that. The mix of Crystal Tears, it's actually pretty basic. You have the Magic Shrouding Crack tier right here, which improves your damage by 20%. The base damage of the spell, not bleeding damage, so there's that. And then we have the Intelligence Nut Crystal tier to increase our spell power of our staff that we're using. But there's a whole bunch of things that you can be using as well. Like, this is also very stamina hungry, so the Green Burst Crystal tier, that's always nice. One of my personal favorites is always the Opaline Bubble tier, because this being a glass cannon, this is very much useful. The same thing goes, for example, with the Crimson Bubble Tia. So you have one extra chance every time that they kill you. There's quite a whole bunch of... I'd say that the most versatility that you can have right here, you can, by all means, because we already have the damage. I mean, going with Magic Crowd and Cactia, it's just going overkill, and with the Intelligence Incantation scaling to improve the magic damage, the spell scaling of our staff, it's overkill because of the damage that we already deal as a base. So by all means, just feel free to play with this. So what I was aiming for this build is for you to have that brokenness right there, but also while you are exploring, remember that sometimes you can get muffed by the enemy. We don't have hyper armor, we don't have anything like high resistances, and it's going to take quite a while for you to cast the spell. It's better to be used in bosses, because in bosses you know when the window of opportunity is going to present itself. That's when you have to cast the spell, and the windows of opportunity are just more than lenient enough for you to be able to use this thing as many times as you wish. But while in exploration, I do advise for you to have some kind of a weapon, not only because of mind economy and the resource economy for mines, but also because when you have, like, when you're getting muffed, yes, it has amazing AoE, but more often than not, a good old trusting Ash of War, a trusty Ash of War, it's always going to do the trick, and I can't stress enough how important it is for you to have at least one basic weapon. The one that I have right here, it's a one that it doesn't have high requirements, and it's also one that allows you to be using from behind a shield that it has a nice card resistance, and that it doesn't have high requirements as well. And overall, and the sense of everything else, the build is just so overpowered that it's just filthy and disgusting, and you should, by all means, abuse it right now that you have the chance, because you better be sure that it is going to get nerfed at some point. Anyways, if you like the content, like and the super appreciated, and also you're a gorgeous beautiful person, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, like the video, have a beautiful day, goodbye.